Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. How's everyone doing tonight? As you can see, I am joined by one of your favorites and mine, Tony Rodrigues. He's a SSP Whistleblower. He's been on the show quite a few times. And tonight we are going to discuss his newly released book, the Ceres Colony Cavalier. I am a good 2/3 of the way into the book. Tony, it's great to have you back here. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Nicole, hi, how's it going? It's been a while, man. It's good to see you.
I know. So
I follow your work a little bit when you post your little clips that are like motivational or like good. I love what you're doing.
Oh, on Instagram?
I'm so happy to see you. Yeah, I'm so happy to see you pop up like that. So you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you. I'm having fun with that. You know, this book has been, in some ways a long time coming. In other ways, it's, I think it's kind of come through pretty quickly for you, but we've all been anticipating this because you've been kind of holding out on some information that you were saving for the book. And I was able to dig into it and get about 300 pages in. And there's so much I want to ask you about, but first, before we kind of get into it, how has the whole experience been? How has your book been received, and how are you feeling now that it's all out there?
It's been a big change. It's been a huge thing. It's been life-changing, literally. I mean, without being dramatic in any way, shape, or form. It's been absolutely life-changing. It was number one in its category for like 4 weeks, and it keeps popping in and out. And I just released it like 2 days ago on Kindle, the Kindle version, and people are just devouring the book. I was the first week or so, and then I had a pre-order sale that, like Amazon kind of delays getting the author his copies. So like when you're the author of the book and you go to buy your copies, it makes you wait 2 or 3 weeks. And then people can just buy the book. So people pre-ordered it, and they were like, man, they gave me, extra money. They paid extra for an autograph and for a Zoom meeting and stuff. And they were like, what gives, man? People already finished your book. People already read your book, and they're talking about it online, like what a great book it is. And I pre-ordered months ago, and I felt so bad, but I finally got all the pre-order shipped, except for like 5 people in Australia, because they won't even ship to Australia. And there's like a super, like a tariff going on because of COVID. You can't send things to Australia freely. So there's a end around I'm working on. I'm going to get an email out to. There's like 5 people I got left to ship the book to, but I sent the rest. But anyhow, it's been a huge weight off my shoulders. I got to say that it's been a huge lift of telling the story. The book tells the story better than I ever could in an interview form. Like I've done hundreds literally of interviews, and I've got a lot of information out about what I went through. And there's a lot of stuff that isn't in the book that I've said in interviews, and it's kind of on purpose. We had to finish the book at some point, so I had to run and get it done. But a book just tells the story in chronological order and with more detail than I ever could in an interview with a questioning back and forth. Because people always interrupt and go, wait a minute. where, like, and then it goes off, the story takes a bend, which is fine in an interview, but the book doesn't do that. So it's a huge relief, and it's really inspired me to make another one.
Okay, so there's book 2 in the works.
Mm-hmm.
And where is that going to be taking us?
So there's a little clip in the book about another 10 years. It's going to be into that. And then it's going to have.
Yes, I read that part.
It's going to have, I'm going to describe that. That's going to be actually the bulk of the second book. But then there are going to be a few other things that I'm going to fill out from the story. And then even like my childhood after I got back and before, like things just, you know what I'm saying? I'm just going to kind of fill things out that I feel like people may find to be interesting. And the reason I'm going to do that, the reason I'm going to include a lot of the Earth stuff is because it happens to other people. So I want so many people that have had similar things happen to them reach out to me, and so I want to include everything that may be on a common denominator level with people that also get taken. So if that makes sense. I'm going to put stuff like that in there, and I'm going to cover that 10 years because at the end of that time it was it was a very spiritual thing. And I think that's why I got where I'm at. I think that something happened again in that time because it was very far away, and I met something, and it's helped me ever since. And that's why I'm sitting here today. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I made it this far, because let's face it, a lot of people don't get this much memory back, and they don't get to talk about it like this. And there's been a lot of bad things. There's been a lot of bullets that have missed me since I've come public. So I got to say that there's something out there that's helping me out. There's some, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a reason for my story being told. So
no, and I truly believe that. I believe that we have some certain high levels of protection that are beyond this realm. Absolutely. I mean, I was just introduced to 2 Arcturians who literally have my back right now as I'm preparing to go deeper into some of the work that I'm being called to. So I believe that, if especially if you feel that during that 10-year period and there was some kind of being that you met with or something that you met with, do you believe that experience was responsible possibly or potentially for your ability to, how when you were getting ready to be brought back to Earth and be put back in your body, that, your name was taken off a list and all of that? Do you think that was part of that?
Right. So I don't know, but the way that I'll fill out and the other thing is, this is like something that if I spit it out right now on an interview, it won't make any sense to people. People go, wait a minute, what? And I know it was going to cause a bunch of like damaging questions. And that's why I've never really talked about that 10 years, because it's hard enough to get somebody. I kind of tailor make when I go into interviews with the mind that the people in the audience know nothing about me. And so I want to present in a structured way. I want to present it in a way that makes me obviously not a crazy person, not somebody that's a screwball. You know what I'm saying? Like, because listen to the stuff I'm talking about. So it's easy for somebody to, to get tripped up. And really, if I got really scrutinized, I could be tripped up with my own words easily, I'm sure. But I try to present it in a way that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, so people can grasp it and digest. And even if they don't believe it, to go, you know what, that guy was so sure of the way that he did it. Like, I don't want to start talking about spirituality and where your soul and my karma and my chi and everything. Like, I don't want to start going into that, like, really woo right off of it, because I want to bring people into this information. I mean, that's the idea, is like, I want to present what happened to me, not in a way like I'm not pissed off about it. Do you get what I mean? Like, I've kind of healed over the anger. I was spent many years when I got back in my life being a very angry teen.
Well,
in my early 20s and in my teens, I was like nothing but angry.
Well, when you read your book, you understand why. And to anyone who, is watching this right now or later on, this book is so detailed. I mean, Tony, I've had you on the show several times, and I've heard your story, even on other podcasts. And there's you're right. The detail level that you go into here is astonishing. And it's gripping, but it's also extremely disturbing in some parts of what's happened to you. before we went live, you were asking me how I've kind of received the book so far. And I'm going to be, I was honest with you. It was really difficult for me to read the beginning. Like the first few chapters were really difficult because this is when you were going through the MK Ultra program. And I mean, you've talked about it, but the details of each thing. I mean, when you talk about, I guess in a way, maybe people wouldn't even realize this, but you're truly glazing over it, even though the details you're giving doesn't seem like that. I mean, not to I don't want to give away everything in your book or anything like that, but the one part that was really hard for me was when you were in the chairs that were suspended by the chains in the classroom with all the kids, and there was a girl that was, I guess, next to you. I guess she's maybe a little bit either beside you or behind you. Mm-hmm. And you were there, and you heard the man come in and literally rape her, and her screaming, and you're just sitting there listening. It's all happening like around you, and the details that you're giving, it's so difficult to digest. I personally had to put the book down, and I picked it back up, and then I realized that I needed to read this at a different date where, like I told you, I was trying to have a very relaxing weekend, and I was like, oh, this is not the mindset that's going to take me into a relaxing weekend. And I really wanted to give your book justice. And so I highly suggest, guys, if you really want to know the details of the truth and understand what kind of darkness there is, I think we all kind of think like, well, I understand. I've heard all these stories. But when you read some of these details, it's very disturbing. It's sickening to the stomach. But at the same time, as we said before going live, in order to know the truth, you have to be willing to see all of the uglier aspects of it so that you know what you're facing, you know what you're dealing with.
The moments like that I put in there because they're evidence, because because it's a testimony against that asshole. Excuse me on the words, but you get what I'm saying? Like, it's a testimony against it. So I wouldn't leave that. I talked about that in my very first interview with Exopolitics, and they cut it out because it was disturbing. But I talked about that time. I went into way more detail. I talked about a lot of the stuff when I did my Gaia interviews. I did 4 episodes for Gaia. They cut one entire episode out because of it. But the thing is, the things that I witnessed when you talk about, especially like Seattle, what went on there, that's evidence. And everybody is begging for you know what I'm saying? Like, anybody watching this right now.
Yeah.
Anybody watching this right now, if you go talk this, at the water cooler tomorrow with your workers, they're going to be, whatever. Does that guy got proof? That's the proof. And they keep cutting it out because it's shocking. You know what I'm saying? Because it was.
Yeah. It's very graphic. But I mean, it's your truth. It's what happened to you. It's your life. It's what you experienced. And again, yes, Seattle, you talked about being there and all the parties and everything, but oh my gosh, some of the things that you went through, it's heartbreaking to read, because I consider you a friend, and to know that one of your friends has lived through this as a child, it's even as an adult to have this stuff happen to you is horrifying, but as a child, and you were very good at really sharing and writing from the place of pure authenticity of I felt like I was connecting with your child, like your child self.
So, I mean, I remember it from that time. You know what I mean? I'm remembering it from childhood, from that time as I went through. And the other thing is I kind of remember what I didn't know at that time. Do you get what I mean? Like, I keep saying that a lot. I've noticed I watched the last interview. You get what I mean? But at the time, I didn't know what was, a person that's born into a dysfunctional home doesn't know that it's dysfunctional until they leave the home. So that time, I was going through here's what I knew is that when I was in Peru, so the whole time when I was in Yokurn and we went through that, we were kind of in a state of mind where the kids really couldn't interact. We were all kind of zoned out, like drugged or, exhausted. So, but when I went to Peru, I watched other kids interact with each other. like close to me. And I knew that normal kids that obviously these kids had friendships, they had friends, and I wasn't allowed to have any. So the entire time, and somebody's pointed this out to me that, it's a reoccurring theme that I always just wanted to have friends through the book, because because my childhood in Peru and in Inyukurn, because those years, and even in Seattle, I had a couple friends, but they would leave. The door, it was a rotating door. So I never really had any friends. And that was, I look at it right now and wow, I'm going to get choked up, but it's kind of still how I am. Do you know what I mean? Like, friendship to me is far more valuable than anything else.
I feel that.
And
I picked up on that as well in your book, that how important the friendship was to you, and how much you needed it and how much you craved it. Like it was like food to you. It was like water, and not having it and realizing how alone you felt and how isolated it was. It really opened my eyes to how important the socialization factor is for children.
That's right. And I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling all through that whole 20 years that I was like, I just thought, when am I going to get my friends? And that was really at the end, which you are not there. I don't think you're there yet. I was reading page 300, see where you're at. You're not there yet, but I did get a group of friends. They were girls, but they were my friends, and I fell in love with one. And that was kind of a big deal. Like, I did get, and then the guys that I worked with, I had friends on the ship. So I did actually get friendship. And that was such a big improvement in my life that I really didn't want to leave. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to, when it was my time to go back, I really had no desire, because I finally had friends after 18 years of no friends, of being friendless, and growing from a child and not socializing to actually having a form of social life. I actually got punished for it, which is why it's named Ceres Colony Cavalier. You'll get to that point.
Well, let's kind of get into some of the things here that I found very interesting, and I don't remember us talking about it on the show, and if you did talk about this in other interviews, I haven't seen them. But I guess the first thing I kind of wanted to get into was when you got to Ceres, and it was your first day of work, but you were told to go on a different train, and you were pretty sure you weren't supposed to be on that train, but they pushed you on that train anyways, and you went into the mines. And in that mine, there was I guess you had to stay on some kind of metal platform to make sure that you didn't get into the anti-gravity, or get
the microgravity.
The microgravity.
The flooring had artificial gravity, and if you stepped off it, you'd go into microgravity, and there was people had got stuck in it. Like, you could get stuck in it, if that makes sense. At least that's why they told us not to go into it.
Yeah. So in that, I'm curious. I really, we may not spend a lot of time here, but you talked about how there was some kind of technology in the water or something what was going on there?
So that was like it was classified information for us as slaves on Ceres Colony, but it was the urban, like a lot of things. How do I put this in perspective? Like, right now, there is no proof of UFOs other than the UAP report, right? So let's talk about ufology. Like, right now, there's zero proof of UFOs or the space programs, but everybody knows about it. You get what I mean? Like, everybody, not only that, but we know a great deal about it. It was the same there for us. So there was no technology in the water. There was nothing like that. There were no ruins on Ceres, but everybody knew that there was. Everybody knew. So the truth kind of, and it became rumor. The rumor mill kind of fed the truth. And so that was what we were told when I was talking to the guys in the mines. They said that, they don't even care. I said, why do they even care about water? They can just pump it. I mean, they can find one of these vast things, one of these pockets of water. It's enough water for them, and we can replicate water anyway. I was like, they don't even need it. What are they going to use it for? He said, they don't want the water. They're gonna build into the cavity of the water, and they can find advanced technology that was left in it. That was the rumor. And then somebody else would be like, no, they're not. You don't know that.
Okay. So the technology wasn't in the water. It was in the space where the water was?
Like an aquatic species lived inside, like an aquatic city.
Oh, interesting.
like
Well, just
like
because
ruins
water.
of a city under the
Yeah.
water in big pockets of water.
Oh, so they were kind of looking for that.
They were looking for big pockets because literally there's oceans inside. I mean, not fully oceans, but like there's huge lakes, massive, miles and miles big pockets of water inside Ceres, and they would let the water out and find buildings in there that another species had built a million years ago or however long ago. Like that was the rumor. So that's what I'm saying. I didn't exactly see, you know what I mean? Like nobody confirmed that to me. It's funny because that's kind of the picture behind me is ruins. So there was at the very end of the book for a short time, just because I was going home, I had a girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? It was it wasn't really a girl, you know what I'm saying? It was like more of a fling, but she had an apartment. And what it was is what's behind me is what the apartments look like. And it was a long cavern that went down for miles. It was like 25 minutes of vertical riding that lift. You can see the elevator behind me. Like it was like 20 minutes. You'd have to go down and get off, get on another one and keep going down. But the triangle doors were made out of stone and they would open. They could tell her mentally when somebody was there, and she could open and close the door, tell you to go away, and the door would tell you to go away. She could actually make you feel pain if you wouldn't leave. The door could make you feel cause a headache. Like it was something that they had found, and the Ceres colony had found these rooms like that in the wall of this long vertical cavern and converted them to apartments and built all those catwalks in that system so you could get to it. Basically, that was underwater, and you would whatever species actually built those rooms with those doors would swim up and down to them. If that makes sense.
Oh, wow.
According to the rumor, according to rumors.
Yeah,
So
sure, okay.
that's what I'm saying. I got to disavow. I could be wrong because I didn't really have any super proof about it, but that was kind of what the rumor mill said there.
It's so interesting because to me, when I think about, like water and even here on planet Earth, I've had Andrew Bartzis on a year and a half ago, and we talked about underwater civilizations here and how there are places deep below the surface that are the water is still in I guess in other dimensions is still inhabited with species, but it's because they're able to program the water in a way that is like, and using it in a way of technology, like what you're speaking. So I'm just wondering if the water itself had something to do, like they were able to program the water, which then would program the caverns, or like what they were doing. I don't know. It's also interesting to me, but
well, they were very advanced, whoever they were. That was the one thing we knew. Whoever left the rooms that were turned into apartments, they were super advanced. It was technology that was really advanced, and that's why they had a kind of a claim to fame that the Ceres colony was the most advanced. That was why, because they had ruins that they were finding.
Okay. And do you know if was there any rumors of these aquatic beings being, I mean, if they know about them, then I guess, were there any interactions with them, with anyone that you are aware of?
No. Just ruins.
Okay. Okay. Well, that I thought was pretty interesting. What was interesting to me as well was this instance where I didn't realize in your 20 and back that you actually came back to Earth for missions.
Yes, we went to Diego Garcia. We went to South America. We would fly. I remember looking out the window and flying over South America, over the jungles, the forests, and we would always talk about, we're almost there. We're right, because I always wanted to go back to Peru. That's where I felt I had family. That was my family to me from the time I was there. And they would always say, and then I remember the one girl was in, she was in like not on the bridge. She was in like accounting. And so she would come down and we were talking. She said, no, Peru's like 2,000 kilometers that way. We're super far away from Peru. Don't even think about it. But yeah, I guess, like she was like really matter of fact about it. Like I was like, are we close to Peru? Can I look at Peru? Do you know where we're at? She's like, no, we're like 2,000 kilometers away. And it was the Catarina Mountains. So there's a place in Brazil, the Catarina. It's a big area, but it was somewhere in there is an entrance to underground caverns that we would go to and drop off cargo. We would go there. And then we went to Diego Garcia, and a lot of people, and that was another thing that's kind of like, I don't want to get you in trouble, But like today, we know there's some things that we know about what's going on in the world that we know are bull crap. Everybody knows it, but you can't even talk about it. You'll get censored. You'll get your show removed if you talk about it. There are things in the political arena and in the medical arena that we can't speak about, and everybody knows that. Anybody that's got their eyes open is, what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to be a doctor to see that the delivery is the same exact delivery that a thug and a criminal delivers their message with. So something's wrong. You can just, and it was the same with that. Everybody was told that the earth was no longer habitable, that the earth had been destroyed. The girls and the citizens of Ceres Colony were told that the earth was not habitable. And once you got in the military, they would brief you on it and say, well, the earth is, and we trade with them. And they would give them like a watered down story of it or why it needed to be classified. But so everybody knew.
So kind of like the way they tell us Mars is uninhabitable.
Yeah, right. Yes, right.
Okay.
And there's water all over it. And it's like every time they talk about Mars in the news, it keeps getting better. Do you know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, by the way, we did find some liquid water. You know what I mean? Like, it looks like there's a lake. Who would have thunk it? Now there's a giant lake there that's liquid. I don't know. And so Mars just keeps getting more vacationable every time they talk about it.
Yeah, okay. So going to one of your Earth missions, which was actually a very brief Earth mission. This one I found really interesting, and this is pretty close to where I think I just finished off in the book. Where you met the EBE5, which I thought was interesting that's what they use to call reptilians.
Well, so is that where I'm at here? I'm looking at page 13 where you're at. So yes, that was Chicago, and that was before that place, but that was Chicago. Yeah. So I had volunteered. I hated my post that I was on the ship I was on. I was literally suicidal, and I had been programmed to not suicide. So,
which by the way, that I think saved your life. Being suicidal, I think actually saved your life on that mission.
Oh, absolutely. And I was like bummed out because here's what happened was after that mission, I thought, well, I did this mission. Maybe I'll get promoted. Maybe they'll move me to anything. I was like, even if they move me to somewhere different, it'd be different than what I'm doing. And I can't stand the two guys I worked with. Hated me. And I was, you know what I mean? It was just a toxic work environment. And I thought, now that I've done this mission, I'll get my hat in the ring for some kind of promotion, or even not even a promotion, but like a sideways promotion, a sideways movement in my career. And nothing happened. And so I just only regretted it afterwards. I was like, that was terrible. Like nothing happened. Like for months and months after, it was like, I just went back to work. It was the same thing. Nothing changed. But.
Well, okay, let's talk about that, because right before you were taken from Ceres over to the moon, and I guess they were using the moon because they had certain technology on there to get you to Earth immediately. But just before you were brought into the room where the technology was, there was a little boy that you ran into in the hallway, or I guess he ran into your foot. I don't know.
He did. I lifted my foot up and he was running at me with his arms open, and I thought he was crazy, but he was trying to hug me. So this is a fantastic thing to say. I'll say this. He contacted me like in 2016 after he saw some of my interviews. He's like, he wrote me and he said, I'm that boy. He's like, I remember you, and it was a dick move what you did. And at the time, I never talked about this story. Do you get what I had never mentioned what happened on that mission. I didn't speak about it publicly. And he said, that was a dick move, man. And I said, what? He's like, I hated you for years after that. He said, if you would have met me up there and I would have killed you. There were times when I tried. There were times when I tried to psychically find you and kill you. I hated you. He's like, and I'm still mad about it. He's like,
wow.
And I said, what happened? I was like, what happened? And he described it to me slightly different. Like the characters, he remembers the two guys that I was with as different people than different. And I'm going to leave some details out, but the two guys that I was with were younger office German guys, young kid. They were kids, really. They were like punks. He remembers them as something different. And then he was with these Grays that were escorting him across the room, and he told me where he went, where they were taking him, and he was being trained to psychically seek, and like he was being trained to go to planets in a warfare situation and find people that were hiding psychically so that they could go send a team and go kill them. So people that escaped a battle and went and hid, he was being trained to psychically find, like, to sniff people out after a battle. They would send him in after the battle was over, and he would learn where they were psychically, and then they would go and finish. It was like a mop-up thing. He contacted me with that. I talked to him for months after that. He actually did some interviews online. He said, should I do interviews like you're doing? And he did. And I corroborated a lot of things. There's things that nobody could have known that he knew about that time. And the age, I did the timeline, the age, everything was right. He's younger than me. You know, he was, I would have been like 21 at the time, which puts him around 9 at the time. Something like, it's been years, obviously, since I did that math, but something like that. It worked at the time when I ended up talking to him. It worked out. But he did interviews, and his family got wind of it, and his friends, and he really paid hell for speaking about this subject publicly back then in 2016 and 17. And so he had his interviews removed. He said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And there's been a few times I messaged him and I asked him a few things, you know, can I use your story or thing? But he's like, please just leave me out of it. I don't want it. It's too embarrassing, you know, to speak about this.
Wow. Well, you know, this is pretty interesting because it really starts to help your story hold more weight, you know, and I thought that was really interesting. What was so like, what really got me when I read that part was how he saw you as someone he could maybe get a hug from, you know, like with everyone that was, because you were walking with 2 other people, like.
He said that at the time he had gotten off, he was on some drugs. They said they had him hooked up to a machine, like a psychic, like an amplifier. And he had all these tubes in him, and he was they gave him drugs that amplified it. And he said at the time they were walking him across to a room of all these beasts. Like, this is a lower level of a more classified area of one of the lunar facilities. And he said when he looked at me, he could see my aura, and it had colors, and everybody else's aura was dark. Like, even the 2 guys he said they were like robots. He said when he saw my aura, he saw colors in it. And that's why he ran. He wanted to give me a hug. He's like, he saw love. You know what I'm saying? Like, it reminded him of the last time he was around somebody that loved him, had the same colors. And he said that's what he saw he saw my aura, and he was running to give me a hug. He wanted me to take him out of there. And instead, those guys had talked me up into thinking I was a badass. And they were, you know what I mean? Like, we don't take crap from anybody around. If anybody, don't let anybody come near you. It's like, they were pumping me up because these guys were like 18 years old and like jacked about their military service, right? They were pumped, and they were kind of getting in my head like we were a gang. And so he comes here, I go around the corner of this hallway, and this little black kid comes running at me. And so I just held up my leg, and he ran into my foot like I kicked him, and he fell down crying. And at the moment, it felt great. But after I thought about, like, I felt like obviously empowered, you know what I mean? You beat somebody up. But after they took him away, and I saw the disappointment. And like, when they lifted him up, I saw it when he knew, like, he fell down crying. He was in pain. It winded him. And then when the Grays got him again, he knew he was taken again. And you know what I'm saying? Like, he saw the disappointment in his face really screwed me up at the time. Like, it screwed me up. And again, that was another thing that kind of reinforced that whole suicidal feeling. Like, I was like, good, hopefully this will be over soon. You know, like, after, when we kept walking, I was like, hopefully, I remember thinking to myself, like, you know, all the more reason to not do that. I can't wait. This could be the one, you know, like, I kept psyching myself up that because it was supposedly, it was a very dangerous mission. It was I was a expendable member of the mission. I was expendable, and it was a mission that we volunteered for, to be expendable. And I was kind of happy at that prospect at the time because of stuff like that. You know what I mean? I just did not fit into the society where I was. I wasn't. I I don't know
Yeah,
how else to
no,
say it.
yeah. And well, like we said earlier, you being suicidal actually, I think, saved your life or was responsible for saving your life in some way on that mission. What I'm interested to ask you is about like how you were able to break that kind of time-space barrier with the technology that you used on the moon there to get you to Earth in an instant. So basically, it was like teleporting you.
It was
You
a
were,
portal. It was a
yeah.
portal room. Like it was a fancy one. So if you think about the transporter room in Star Trek, it was 5 times bigger than that, and it was much fancier. And there were a lot of things that were made out of stone. So, and then I found out as I was writing the book that there are certain kinds of stone. There was a stone we looked up that's like, I described them as slate, like a black slate there were a plate, like a foot thick and big black slate, and then one above it. And then the ball would appear, a ball of light would appear in it. And when you got close to it, it would not be light and you could see where you were going. And I found out right in the book, we did research that there's actually a slate that looks just like that, or a stone that looks like that blocks radiation, that is a radiation barrier. And I went,
Oh,
whoa, no kidding. And I looked up pictures, like, yep, that's exactly it. Like a
wow.
smooth black slate with layers that, like if you chipped it off.
Yeah.
But it was because, so I was told that those were Americans that were running it. And that room, it was like a rare portal system because of the power system on the moon, because the moon has a super huge power output that whatever their energy, whatever powers the moon, has a great deal of output, so it can make portals because it takes a great deal of energy. Like they can't just put a portal room like that on all the ships, and they're not. It takes a great deal of power to make small controlled portals for people to walk into safely, I guess. So that was what was, hopefully that's a disclosure. You know what I'm saying? Like it's up there somewhere right now. So hopefully that.
Yeah, like so. Okay, so take us through this. Like, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because you were walking. Were you walking across a platform or just along the floor? Like, was it just a flat floor, or was there a specific kind of runway thing that you were walking on?
Yeah, they had like a little thing marked for you to stand. You had to stand behind a line, and
Yeah,
they were like, when we tell you to go, you walk in a straight line. Don't. And they said don't modify. Walk the same speed, and don't hesitate at the front. You know what I mean? Like you have to walk right into it. And they said just keep walking until you get there. You'll know. And they said whatever you do, don't hesitate. They were like very nervous. They said people, there have been people that hesitate at the last minute when they get to the light, actually, because what it is it was a ball of like a light green light, and like a beach
how
ball,
big is this light?
like
Like
a
the size
beach
of
ball,
a beach ball? Okay,
like
and
a
is it
beach ball
like
size.
are you walking towards just a wall or like what are you
Well, it was in the
walking?
center of the room, like in the center,
Oh,
like there were two big slabs, and then you stood back, and then there was a staircase, and there was a wall that turned clear. That the technicians, they had their big computer, their big control area. They flipped the switch, and the wall turned clear so that they could see. And you were walking alongside. You were walking, you know what I mean, like sideways to where they were at, and but you would see a green light, like a bright light, but like a dim bright light, if that makes sense, of light green. And that would appear, it was a beach ball size that appeared in the middle of the room. And they said, okay, go. And the first guy walked into it, and he would go flip and just gone. And when it was my turn, when I walked up to it, when you got
yeah.
inside the light, the ball turned into like the room. I could see the room where I ended up. I could see it. Like I could see the doorknob. What it was, I saw a doorknob, and then it was rounded around the ball like a room. And when I got there, when I went, whoop, I was in a stairwell, and I looked, and there was the doorknob. Like, like the stairs in a building, the stairwell. I was in the stairwell, and I looked, and it was the exact same doorknob that I was like, wow, I could see it where I was. And I was like, I was dizzy. I was disoriented from it. We had waters there. We had to drink water. They had a pack of water for us right laying there. And we walked out the door, and we were on the top floor of a section of a building on a parapet
Yeah.
area.
Okay, so was the beach ball light, was it kind of hazy? Is that why it felt like it was dim and bright at the same time?
Yes. It wasn't
Okay.
a bright, like a flashlight light. It was like a
And
hazy.
was it kind of like at waist level or was your head walking into it? Like where was the
It was kind of lower. It was like, like
chest?
chest level. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it
All
was
right.
weird. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that you would walk into it. I was thinking, I think I even said something, or one of us said like, it's going to cut my head off. Like how is that going to work? You thought that you would walk in it, but really as you walked to it, you curved into it. Like your space that you were, like when you walked, you would curve around it and go into it. Like it was space.
Oh, so almost like you were being suctioned in, but from a
The space you were in got turned into it. Yes, got curved. The space you were in got curved. So you looked like you were being curved, and you couldn't feel it. You couldn't tell. It was like I said, when you got close to it, you could see the other side of it, and then you just walked right through it. It was.
Oh, my whole crown chakra is like itching right now. That's so wild to me. So when you were walking up to it, why do you think people would hesitate? Is it just because it's weird? Like,
Okay, because there was a moment when you got between inside the light of it and you could see something. And like that moment, I kind of had the urge, you know what I mean? Like I only did it once, really twice on the way back. I only did it that's all I ever did it. So it's like I got good at it or anything, but I just remember I was kind of scared of stopping. They scared me. And so I kept going. But when I did see it, when it turned into something that I could see, I was shocked. Like I kind of was curious about it, but I just kept going, and all of a sudden I was there. But I kind of wanted to. I did have the urge to stop and kind of look into it, like peer into it and see it. You get what I mean?
Yeah, like you wanted to first scope it out before you went in.
Yeah, like play with it.
Okay. So all right. Wow. Okay. So that's really interesting that technology exists. That like I found that highly, highly interesting. So when you get to Chicago, so you're in Chicago, and I thought this was really hilarious because you were going there because there was a reptilian that needed Mercury. Like, what was it?
So at the top of the building, we had to climb up the side of the building from where we portaled in, which I thought was stupid. They told us we were testing out like a low grav belt. So we had a harness that we put on, and it was battery powered. And you turned it on and you weighed less than what you normally would weigh. And then we had the they weren't suction cups, but it was like electronic things that would grip the wall, and we climbed up. And they said that it was an experiment, like it was a new technology, and we were the field test. They said in the same time. And then we carried up backpacks that had like a chrome bottle full of mercury. When we got to the top, there was big square, air conditioning units. They're gigantic that are on top of buildings. And one of them looked like an air conditioner, but it was actually a low grav unit, an anti-grav unit that gave the room under it or wherever this thing was living inside the top floor lower gravity. It was a low gravity unit, and it needed mercury. And I guess it had a leak and it had been repaired. They sent another team there before us and fixed it. And then we were just putting mercury in it. And I think we were like the cherry on top for this thing, you know what I mean? Like ordered people to eat, kind of like takeout. And so it was like 3 birds with 1 stone. We were testing out the harness, filling it with mercury, and then we were expendable. So we were dinner for that thing.
Okay, so your encounter with this reptilian was very interesting. The way, and I don't know if I was interpreting it correctly. So how big was this reptilian? Were you able to see the full thing, or was it more of like an energy?
It had a suit on that was giving off gas, and then I think it was like projecting like a movie or something onto the gas, and it was invisible. It was, you know what I'm saying? It was projecting what was behind it. So it had invisibility. Like it had a suit. And it came close to me. His eyeball was big, and it came close to me and checked me out. And he said it was a big yellow reptilian looking eyeball.
Okay, because I was like, the way I interpreted it, and of course, like maybe I was just totally enthralled, but it's like the eyeball of the reptilian came down floating, like it was, he
was invisible. Yeah.
Okay.
Imagine he had a suit on, and like I said, when he got close, I could see that it was spitting gas. It had like a network of gas that it was spitting out. And the gas had the effect of it was bending the light around it. Or I think, the more I think about it, it was probably projecting something. But I was freaked out because the other thing is, at that moment, when it walked up on us, like I almost vomited and pooped my pants and peed myself and had a headache all at once. Like it was very intrusive. It took us over. We all stood at attention and were immediately it was like violating, like mentally dominated. Like we were frozen. And then it came down and it was talking to us. And so I was freaking out at the time, and I looked, and when I saw it, because I saw the eyes up on top of the air conditioner unit on the antigrav, it was like standing on top of it. So it was 20 feet in the air. It was way up high. and it came down and looked at me in the eye, like it bent down. I just watched the eye float around, and the other thing is you could kind of feel it where it was. Do you get what I mean? Like I could feel it. If you've ever, maybe not everybody's like me, you know what I mean? Like maybe not, but
what do you mean, Tony?
Thanks. Yeah. But like I've been at the, like at the circus, when you stand in the room with an elephant, you can kind of get a vibe from it's a big life form that's amazing, and you could feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like you can, like,
yeah, you feel the presence.
I think in the dark, if you really tune, if you really tune in, if there's somebody in the room in the dark, you can feel them there. You know what I mean? You don't need to see. There's another sense.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that ability, because it's also a gift to not have it. You know what I mean? But I could feel the thing, and it was huge. It was a big thing. You know what I mean? Like it was 10, 12 feet tall worth of a being that I could feel. But I could never really lay out. The only part of it that I saw was its outer shape of the suit of the gas and the eyeball that came up on me. People always go, well, what was it? And can you draw it for us? Tell me what it was. It's like, I didn't really see it. It literally had an invisibility suit. And that's how it worked. It had some sort of gas that it probably projected the scene from behind it onto. So that's how you can make one. If there's an inventor at home, I just told you the secret. So go get after it. Be valuable.
Yeah. So when the Reptilian engaged the three of you, and was it four of you?
4 of us.
Yeah, 4 of you.
5.
And was looking for this one who was the most afraid. I instantly was like, oh, thank God Tony was suicidal.
I was thinking, when it came in front of me, I was thinking, yes, here we go. You know what I mean? Like I was literally wanted to die at that time. And I was thinking, finally, this is my ticket out of here. Like that's literally what I thought. But at the time, I didn't know that it was sniffing for fear. I didn't know that until after it was all over with. And, like I said, I just wasn't suicidal. And like the whole climb up, I was afraid of dying on the climb up. I kept thinking the couple guys were like, the batteries on this could die out. So, if your batteries go dead, you're going to fall, because it was electric. It was on batteries, the climbing.
Yeah. Apparatus. Like you couldn't use the full power of it. You had to have it at a certain level.
Yeah. And he said, if you run the batteries dead, you're just going to fall and die. And I was like, so there was a challenge, even though I wanted to die at that time, there was a challenge. It was a challenge to stay alive. Like I didn't want to die of my own accord. And actually I think I was really heavily programmed against that, like mind conditioned.
Yeah.
I kind of still am. So let that be my statement that I'm not suicidal. Tony Rodrigues did not suicide under any circumstance, because I'm just not like that. So, I don't have it in me to do it. I just don't.
No, you've gone through so much healing through all of this. Well, it's funny because before I got to the part where you had, you assume just from what you've seen when you went back to Chicago, when you were back on Earth, and you believe it could very well have been the Sears Tower where you were at. That was actually my first gut thought, was when you were going to the building. I'm like, I wonder if it's the Sears Tower. So then when you said that in the book later, when I got to that part, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then it also made me think of, you remember that TV show? They only had a couple seasons and then they took it out. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, I can't remember what it was called though. Was it called Earth People, or People of Earth? Or I don't... What was that TV series where they had people who've had experiences, experiencers, and they would sit in almost like an AA kind of type setting?
No, I don't know. I've never seen it. I got to check that. No, I'm curious.
My God. Who in the chat? Tell me, you guys in the chat. I know someone in the chat knows what show I'm talking about. It's called... It was so awesome. You've got to watch it. You got to find it, because it had a couple seasons, I think. It for sure had one season, but it was hilarious, and it was total disclosure, but done in like a very comical way. And there was a reptilian in the show, and it was like this CEO kind of corporate guy, and I always envisioned him living in Chicago, even though I don't know that's where he lived. In my mind, he lived in Chicago. and he was working in some kind of building. So then when I'm reading your story, I'm like, holy crap, or where did I hear, like, I don't know if I'm messing it up or what, but I know I've heard someone talk about, a reptilian CEO type.
People of Earth.
People of Earth. Anna. Yes, Anna. Thank you. Okay, I was right. People of Earth. So you gotta look that up. Anyone who hasn't seen it, you gotta see it. It's an awesome show. It's great. It's great for laughs too. But that was just so funny because I was like, I really wonder, like, what was that reptilian doing there?
Right. And how many are here? That's like, what I wonder. How many of them are up there like that? Like, they could be coming and go. Like, think about it. We're not allowed to go into a lot of places. Like, just in public. There was, like, walking down the street. And I live in a very small town. It's like 10,000 people in town here. And it's, there's a little strip, like a little old Michigan town. Walking right down the street, there's a lot of places I'm not allowed to ever see. Right here, right next to me. There could be ETs living right there. I wouldn't know. And you got to think, if they don't need a car to park outside because they can come and go in a different manner, they could be quite cozy. You know what I'm saying? Especially you take a high rise and the entire top floor of it, they modify it to have lower gravity like them, their same environment, and they can portal in and out. They can live their regular life the same way. You get what I mean? Like, they can be very comfortable and live just like they're at home and be right up one floor up from us anywhere. So that's a scary thought, and that was something that I think about quite a bit. And that's one of those things. Like, I went for like 2 years doing interviews before I ever mentioned that memory, because it was in Chicago, because I didn't want some kind of pushback, or you know what I mean. Like, I'm not afraid of people being skeptical, especially at this point. Like, I'm kind of good at it, you know what I mean, of blowing people off that hate me. But in the beginning, I was really afraid of, you know what I'm saying, just having my whole life ripped apart. And so there was a lot of things to me, I felt like it was fantastical. So I just didn't talk about it. But now, but I still have always thought about that. Like, I literally drive through cities and look at big skyscrapers and go, there could be a lot going on up there. You don't know. Like, we're not allowed to see a great deal of skyscraper. There's very lavish, very beautiful things that none of us ever see, that are right on our same street.
Well, I'll never be able to look at an air conditioning unit the same way now.
It's true. Me too. Me too.
I'll be like,
It was disguised, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's, like, before I get into the last thing, what was exactly this antitelephoning?
It's funny. It's funny because I put all this stuff in the book, and like, I noticed that people keep asking the same kind of questions out of the book. You know what I mean? Like, I tried to explain it as best I could. Anytime you talk about time travel, it's just, I don't think that people that me, especially me, but I don't think that humans are built to think about time travel. Do you get what I mean? Like, I think that we're literally not built to do the math in our head or think, because it really boggles a lot of people's minds when you talk about that. And me too. And the more I think about it, I do too, But antitelephoning was a technique that they knew that they could get away with, because they had tried traveling time aggressively so that they could change the timeline into their favor, and they got in trouble for it. So it was policed. Antitelephoning was a way that they could schedule an aggressive mission. Like, think about a ship going to another world and then stealing from that world. They would go there once and case the place out, kind of get a plan and go, oh, we can take this. So and make their little heist plan up, and then come back and then schedule it. And if it failed, they got caught. The ship never came back before it left, so they could just cancel the mission, and it never happened. They never lost the ship. And I always say, like, this is how it worked. Like, the ship would leave at 8 a.m. and it would get back at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes before it left, because that's the whole thing with the portal technology, that time and space is the same thing. Travel great distances of time. You can also, travel great distances of space. They could also travel time. So they would come back 5 minutes prior, but in order to stay in line with the laws of time travel, they would stay 5 minutes away. So if they could fly 10,000 miles or 100,000 miles in 5 minutes at maximum speed, that they would come back 100,000 miles away. Do you understand? So they weren't home yet, but the light would get there sooner, and they could see that the ship was in it at the right coordinates and go, oh, the mission worked. Send them out, let them go. And then the ship would fly and leave. Or if the ship didn't come back when it was supposed to, they would cancel the mission, and it never happened. They wouldn't, because they knew it failed. So they would go and rewrite another mission and try it again the next day. And they would cancel the mission. And it happened a lot. By a lot, I mean six, 8 times that it happened where they canceled our flight, and we just sat around and cleaned all day, and they debriefed us. The next couple of days, the next 3-4 days afterwards, they would ask us if we had any strange dreams, to let them know, because they wanted to debrief, and they would interview us and ask us if anybody dreamt about a mission during the next couple of weeks, that they wanted to know about it. So maybe there was a residual thing that, they wanted to get info.
Yeah. And I mean, even just hearing you say that, the average person down here who doesn't understand, how valuable dreams can be for information would think, what you mean? The military was willing to like base information and intel off of dreams,
The Ceres Colony was, and they were very, they're pretty proficient. So the U.S. military is very interested in dream work as well. The Project Gateway and all that's based on astral travel. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing on my Patreon channel about that. We have a tier 3 we're trying to delve into that tech and kind of trying to unwind it. We're still in the beginning phases of the group figuring it out, but we're working on it, and there's some promise there. I think there's big things. The military really got it down, and I found declassified CIA documents about Project Gateway. When I was looking into Project Grill Flame and Project Center Lane, the ones that I were involved with that spawned into Project Gateway and eventually Stargate, those were all CIA funded projects that those kids in the beginning in Inyokern, that was the funding. I found the funding and the date. They don't tell you specifically Inyokern. I just looked in the CIA declassified library.gov online, and I put Inyokern in there. And then I forget a few other words in there, but Grill Flame, it was the project that I remember. I remember they called it, and kids started crying. He said, "You guys are in a Project Grill Flame," and kids were like, they're gonna burn us. Like during that class, after we had been, a bunch of kids started crying because we thought we were going to get grilled, like literally grilled. He said, no, it's just a code name for it. It's like, that's he explained it all to you. It was super matter of fact to the doctor. But anyhow, I'm sorry, I'm off on a little tangent. Nicole,
No,
I'm so sorry.
No, I love your tangents. So, okay, that's interesting that, man, so I mean, if they're using that technology, that anti-telephoning technology on Ceres for their ships, would you assume, or do you know if they're using that even here right now, or like
I
from
would
the moon?
imagine. So, right. So there are rules about the time travel, but you got to think just that same technique is super powerful. And I think it was very classified. And that's another reason why I make a point to talk about it, because it's a super classified tech. I don't think other colonies knew about it. I think just the Ceres colony knew about it, or at least they believed that they were the only ones that did it at the time. And the thing, so somebody asked in the thing, what about temporal paradoxes? And what I was told was that there was a time when the ship appeared, but in the wrong place, as if it had been kidnapped. Like the ship would appear, but only the captain knew. Like nobody else in the crew knew where the ship was supposed to go until the last minute, just in case somebody boarded it and took it over and came back. You know what I'm saying? In case there was a hostile force. And that did happen. And what they said, we were like, well, what happens then? There's 2 ships. And they said the exact moment that they canceled, when they come down with when they scrub the mission, they cancel it, the other ship vanished. It was right then and there. So there was no Mandela effect about it. They could see the ship out in the wrong place, and they would call the mission scrubbed, and the ship would vanish immediately, right that very second.
Wow. So they scrub it like it never happened.
Yep. It would just disappear, and the ship would disappear, like, because it didn't happen, because it was never sent.
So just like vaporized.
Yeah. Yes. And because the mission didn't happen, but I just thinking about that, I still can like it bakes my brain. Like it's hard to get your head around it. Like, that's what I mean. I think we're just not built to think about temporal physics. You know what I mean? Like some people can really get, like chess masters can really do chess in their head, and most people aren't built to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a very rare thing. I think time travel is the same thing, same kind of, like, we don't have the brains for it.
Do you think like that ship would just go back in time to the point right before it was built? Like
No, it was just done. It just
it's
vanished
just
because the
it just
mission,
vanished.
it was a paradox. It was a paradox. So the ship,
Oh.
as soon as, you know what I mean? Like, here, I'll use my little pen. Like, here's the ship. Can't do it. Here's the ship. And it flies away. And then it comes back 5 minutes before, but in the wrong spot. So they know it failed. So they cancel and don't let it fly. And then that ship that's over there already just disappeared. It was just gone immediately. There wasn't some kind of Mandela effect or like a multiple timeline broke off. There was none of that. They just, as soon as it was canceled, and they said that the residual effect was that people would dream about the mission. People would still have dreams. Some missions were very traumatic, whatever happened, and that people would have reoccurring nightmares about it, and they wanted to know.
Oh, so it would still live on in the consciousness of
The
people.
consciousness did experience it. That's right.
Wow. Okay. So matter-wise, it would disappear, but what was experienced didn't necessarily
It actually
disappear.
did happen somewhere. It actually did happen, and people did experience it. But they're, you know what I'm saying? Because we basically, I don't know for sure, but we probably exist outside of time space as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Our consciousness is tethered, and when you go to sleep, you're dreaming about things that are far away and outside of time space. So
So much to absorb there.
I know I'm starting to get like,
Okay, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was the rat humanoid Gradiel.
Gradiel. Yeah, that's what I named him.
That's what
we
you named him.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was
so
something like that. To be truthful, it was something like that. It was close. All the names,
okay.
I think I'm close on.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean,
He was neat.
good enough job. Okay, so tell me about this rat humanoid. Like how tall and
He was short. He was 70 pounds soaking wet. He was short and skinny, and he had like a rat leg. Like, he had the backwards knees and a big, like, his feet were exposed. They didn't wear shoes. And he had like tougher feet, like rat looking 3-pronged feet. And he had the material, like, how, when you think about thread count of our material, his was the opposite. Like, it looked like a burlap bag. Like, the threads were super huge and rough. And that was his uniform. It was made out of like that. Like, it was, and that was what's comfortable to him because he had a thin layer of fur, under his skin. He actually had like a thin layer of gray fur, and he had a face of a humanoid, small, round eyes. You know what I mean? He looked the closest, and I don't mean this as some kind of like derogatory thing, right? You got to dance around it, but I'm saying the closest resemblance would be like like a Chinese man. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, or an older
Yep.
Asian man. I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but
No,
I'm
you're
saying
you're comparing features.
that's what he looked like, but smaller. Smaller,
Yeah.
but he had that kind of innocence, and he had that sign. He had humor. He had like a sarcastic, okay, well, figures anyway. You know what I mean? Like, he was kind of like, yeah, it figures. And the translator didn't. We had translators. We had implants in our heads that gave translation, and the translator didn't work well with his race. So it was a first contact kind of thing. Like, we were the first few ships that ever had contact with that species because they're coming into their space age. And the translator, so he sounded like he had a really thick accent, like, you know what I mean? Almost like, have you ever heard somebody talk in Hawaiian, like a any thick accent, like English people, you can't understand what they're saying, but you can. They're talking the same language, but it's so thick. You know what I mean? That I don't want to impersonate it and embarrass myself.
No, no, wait, try.
Yeah. But he was like that. So they made fun of him when he already left the room. They were like, yeah, I could hardly tell what he's saying. Like, they would make fun of him. But I thought he was the neatest guy. Really, I was stoked because I wasn't allowed to really have contact with ETs at the time. I was told to always stay away from ETs on the base if I was out and about. And he was like one of my first ETs, you know what I'm saying? Really, he was one of my first ETs that I spent time with in a relaxed manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I thought he was cool as shit. I really did.
Well, he sounded cool. And I kind of jumped ahead into your book. So I was like, because I was like, there's something in here I know that I'm going to want to ask. And I was, found it really quickly. So what planet was this? Did you know what planet or?
I don't know. I don't even. It was in our galaxy somewhere, but I don't know where it was. They were all just numbered. The planets were numbered. Like we never really knew where the stars that we went to. They had numbers. We didn't. They didn't have names. And most of the time, and I mean very much most of the time, like we went to stars that were beyond the line of sight from Earth. So right, like if you looked out, that's what we always said is we don't even bother going to stars that you can see from Earth. Like I think what is it, 3,500 or something, 3,000 stars you can see in the night sky from Earth. With the human eye, you can see that's how far they always said we don't bother. We've already traded with all those. So we always go way farther than that. Any star that we go to, you can't see from Earth. It's very far away. So.
And what did this planet look? So it sounded like it was similar to Earth in some ways.
It was swampy. It was close to the same gravity. It was a little bit different. I want to say a little bit heavier, but you couldn't tell. They said the gravity was slightly different, but it was like a decimal point. It felt the same. And it was they told me the water was poisonous, that if you fell in the water, you'd die. And it was smelly. It smelled acidic or something. It smelled like sulfury. But there were trees growing out of it. It was a swampy area. And when there were plants that were very thick. It was very Earth-like. The plants were slightly different than Earth, if that makes sense. They were like when we landed on land, it was red dirt and very viney grass. Like it was viney instead of grass poking up like this. It was sideways and viney, and the plants were thick, everywhere. And they had it looked like a military camp. It had metal buildings that were rounded over, that were built simply, and they had vehicles that looked like an old truck. Like they had stuff like that there, so that they had their version of stuff that it looked very familiar, like a quasi weird military 1970s military base, and he was the only one there. It was a forward thing, and he had arranged to be the only guy there. He was trying to trade. He was trying to make money on the deal. He wasn't trying to get technology. He was trying to get rich. That was however he contacted them, however that happened.
Okay, so like what were you guys getting from him?
It was like an ore. It was like a rare ore to them. And he had a lot of it. He had the box was it was in meters. It was like 3.5 meters by 3.5 meters by 2 meters or something, big giant boxes. And they were full of ore, and they had like 600 of them, or a few hundred of them. If I'm saying that right. Yeah, it was like 180 or 200 of these boxes worth of this ore that was in it, and it was a rare ore, and he was wanting to trade it for something that he could, like a piece of technology that he could patent and get rich off of, like a microwave, or you know what I mean, like something that would advance. That's really what he was trying to do, and they shined him on because they had no intention of doing the deal. Because they gave me a special pad. That was the other thing, is I had a computer. They gave me like an iPad thing, and it only did the I put in the measurements of the box, and it would tell me how many would fit on the LCAC and how many would fit in the ship. Like I did the stacking report, and it told how many trips we'd have to take for how many he had, because they didn't know until we got there how many there would be. So I did all that, and when I was done with my report, we were on the ride back to the ship, and I finished my report, and they were like, "Don't even bother." They were like, "Don't even bother. We're not trading. We're not about getting that crap." Like, this is just a step one in a process, is kind of what they said. Like, this is just the beginning of something that's going to happen to them. Like, we're going to take this world over, basically, is what he said, in a roundabout way. And I didn't realize it at the time. And I want to say this, that it wasn't until I spoke privately with Jason Rice about how he knew that the IDAR force worked alongside with Draco forces, and how they had a cookbook on how they took over worlds. And that was kind of the opening move. And I said, no, that's exactly what happened. Like me and him talked on the phone for a long time. And I said, That's exactly what happened. Like that was what was going on. So it made sense. A lot of the conversation that I didn't understand at the time made sense after talking to Jason.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Well, it's fascinating. I mean, I still got about another 150 pages, I think, to go. But it's truly fascinating. I highly recommend you guys buy the book, and I think you're gonna want to actually have it in your hand because some of this stuff is so it's so some well, I mean, some of it is, the really difficult stuff to read is at the beginning. More so, it's you almost need to like pinch yourself, like, is this real? Like, am I actually living in this right now? So it's I think I highly suggest getting the book, and there's details in there that you just can't ever get when you're in an interview. Like, you just can't. It's so well put together, and I think you did a great job, Tony. Of
Uh,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that I said in the very beginning of the book is there's no way to dream this up. There's just too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've said the same thing over and over again. There's just too much of it in there for me to discount it and just we'll go quietly into my life and not say anything about it. There's just too much there,
Mm-hmm.
And I said that in the book. There's just no way to dream up 20 years of dream. And
just even when I'm reading it, I'm like, there's just no way someone could make this up. Like it
I'm definitely not that clever of a liar. Believe me. Anybody that knows me in my real life knows that I'm not a clever liar. I'm really not.
Yeah,
You know
no.
what I mean?
And it comes across very genuinely. That's the whole thing. Like, you've got, and I've said this before on the show, Tony, but you have this very genuine vibe to your energy, your delivery, just your story in general, the way you deliver the message. It's very genuine. And that is very noticeable in the book when you're reading it.
Thanks. I have no desire to read it ever again. Like,
I don't blame you.
Ever. I will now, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do enjoy kind of thumbing through it and kind of saying, oh, yeah, there's that page. And it got edited. Jackie Kenner went through and edited and made it a little bit more readable than just my kind of ramblings at some points. She said the same thing. So it made it a lot more readable. It's easier. It's faster to read. So when I go back and sometimes read how she put it, I went, oh, that's kind of clever how she did that. But, I can see the difference at it. But for the most part, I really do not have a desire to read the book. I will say this to anybody watching. I just got it out on Kindle, the Kindle version the other day. And it's great. I mean, for Kindle, obviously, because you don't have to do the shipping and everything. But the illustrations didn't come out the same as there. That's really the only real difference, is that all the pictures that are in it in the Kindle version are way smaller. So that's the only difference in those.
Okay. Well, I've dropped the links, guys, in the video below if you want to take a direct link to get the book, or you can visit his website and get more information. Of course, if any of this is kind of, jiving with any of you guys in the audience, even if it's not like secret space program, maybe it's just you want to remember certain things from your past, your childhood. I know that there's so much value that comes from understanding why you are the way you are, like, you don't necessarily need to go into every nitty gritty detail of your trauma, but it helps, I believe, to have some kind of context that explains certain behaviors or reactions or triggers that you have, and getting access to your memory. So you have that memory recall course on your website as well.
On TonyRodrigues.com, and check out my Patreon show on Patreon Talks with Tony. We're coming into the third year, I think, second or third, but we're over like 70 shows on there, and it's doing good. So check it out. But the memory course is ongoing, and we get a lot of good feedback. And what that is most people, I think, dive headfirst into a regression, and I think it's overkill. I think there are things you can do. There are exercises you can do to give your brain a workout and work on memory. If you have a fragmented memory that doesn't make sense, it's a way to expand on it and kind of get more memories and kind of get your foot in the door of that memory and expand on what happened. And it doesn't have to be an ET abduction. It's any kind of repressed hidden memory. The same exercise really helps a lot. And I think people should do that first and then consider a hypnotic regression in that order.
I agree with you. It's better to kind of go in especially because you don't know what you're getting yourself into, like, so it's better to go in digestible chunks that kind of give you a little bit of foundation before you dive right in. So I thank you so much for coming back on the show, Tony. It was great to
seeing you
reconnect
again.
with you.
Yeah.
And thank you to my audience, guys. I love you so much. Go out and grab Tony's book, Ceres Colony Cavalier. You will not be disappointed. It's a good, looks like it's almost 500 pages. It's like 450, it looks like. So go out and grab it. And guys, I love you so much. And I'll be